Hello, my tea stirrers. Hello, my babies. Well, it's not going to be just the month of February that we're going to talk about things that matter. But the problem is Black history. Well, it's not going to be just the month of February that we're going to talk about things that matter. We're going to talk about it throughout life. But is Black History Month the shortest month of the year? Is that all we should have? And what is being taught to our children for Black History Month? Are you teaching your children other things besides what they see? Are you digging in the Black history crates to give them the real Black history? The American history, the Negro history, the ninja history, whatever name you want to call us. Say it loud, break my proud, whatever. But we're going to wait for some people to come on up in here. But if you're catching this on a replay, you know what you do. You know to fast forward through the waiting time and get straight to the action. And if this is your first time up in here, please hit that subscribe button. Help this channel grow. Hit that subscribe, hit that like, and do not forget to leave a comment down below. So we're going to wait a little bit. And this is also an open panel. Hey, no one. Hey, Drippy. Hey, Casey. Hey, Brooke Does It Better. Hey, Love to Be Me. Good to see you. But today we're going to have a good conversation. Remember, just if you're waiting for the show and you're watching the replay, skip past the waiting period and get straight to the show. And all my Bush babies, how you doing? We ain't gonna hold up too much longer. We're gonna start this show. We got people coming in. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But I just don't like to start, and then next thing you know, they miss the good stuff. And then they're gonna have to they have to catch it on replay too. Remember, if it's too loud, let me know. If it's an echo, let me know. It's not me. A lot of these videos are done 50 years ago, but this video is brought by Dane Calloway. I believe his name is Dane Calloway. Go check out his channel. We're going to start this show right now. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Sanctioned by the state, sanctioned by the state, sanctioned by the state. So I believe that is a conversation that's worth having. And I see that as right and wrong. I don't see that as political or non-political.
Nobody alive today in 2019 was a slave back then. So what are we getting paid for? Who's getting paid? Why are they getting paid? It's no more than a campaign promise from Democratic hopefuls trying to get some kind of attention out here.
ABL. Listen, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They provide economic restitution to those people. Now, if I came into your house, Mr. ABL, and I stole $1,000 from you and then I died, or if I stole $1 million from you and then I died, would you say, oh, well, Reese died, so the money doesn't matter anymore? No, you would go talk to my children. My children are still living off the benefits of that $1 million.
Just because somebody's granddad stole something doesn't mean I'm responsible for it. If somebody's granddad was a serial killer and then they found out 100 years later, you don't go after the kids and say, okay, you got to go to jail now, or you got to pay back some money because of what your grandfather did. It makes no sense. You know who did it. You should have been able to catch them while they were alive, punish them while they were alive.
We want to focus on is the economic harm that was done to Black people. If we really break down what slavery was, people were brought.
As usual, we always get these Sambos. We get these people that don't understand what economics is, that do not understand what they've been so educated. I ain't gonna say educated. They've been so educated that they don't understand. When you go see all these old banks, that's our money. The money you in the bank. What if they told you your family owned it? Would you claim it? When you go to these old hotels, what if they told you your family owned it and it's yours now? What you're gonna say? No, I don't want it. What if they told you got so much land down here in the South, your family owned it? You could do whatever you want to do with it. No. See, people gotta be careful what they say, but it's another coon. We'll let him coon.
Brought from across the water to work, and that was free labor. So what we have is generations and years, hundreds of years of systematic discrimination and shutting out of economic access to Black people, and that has to be repaid.
If we're going to blame the government of the USA, even though nobody is alive right, wait a minute, even though nobody's alive right now, 2019, that was alive back then, and then the thing about it is, who's going to pay it? You're talking about the government. The government is funded by the people. That means me, that means you will pay for it. So how does it make any sense? Like I said, it would have been more
Let me tell you how many times
the
US
former slave
has
owner paid the slave when reparations would have been due, which is at the end of slavery, not right now. It makes no sense. This whole argument,
As we see, he's double talking her and over talking her. What do you mean who gonna pay it? Whoever benefited. Whoever benefited. That's who does the payment. That 1% that we made, the 1%, they owe us. That's who. You think the 1% ain't got the money to pay us?
There's no logic here.
America's never even studied the effects of slavery on Black people. They've never sat down and said, we know that as a government, we sanction this experience, but we don't even know how far that experience reaches because no one's ever studied it. How much do we owe Black people? No one's ever studied it. Why? Because the government has literally buried its head. It's paid out everybody else and turned its back on the Black people in America who have given so much to want to just strive to be a part of this country and with their blood, sweat, and tears.
They paid the money when it was
whether
due,
it's 150 years. That's irrelevant. The point is the effects
how long are we going to continue this narrative? 200 years, 300 years, 5,000 years? How long are we going to continue the narrative? At what point do we say we're past slavery?
We're going to continue this narrative as long as it takes. Just remove yourself out of it. That's why I talk about it. You don't want it. There's no need to conversate with you, sir. Sir.
Stop it now because the buck stops here. Hopefully my generation will stand up and say that the buck stops here so we don't have to go on with this any longer.
I know that there's a lot of disagreement, both about whether it should be done and if it were done, how it would be done. I'm not naive about that. But I do think that that dark cloud still hangs over our country. I believe that we ought to move forward in the 21st century as one nation with one destiny. And that until that issue is resolved, until that original sin is addressed, we may think that we're moving forward as one nation, and I don't think that we ever really will.
Dan Calloway, check him out. Very good work.
Because we're entering the age of AI, we're going to have self-driving cars and trucks in 5 to 10 years. 30% of malls are going to close in the next 4 years, thanks to Amazon. 2.5 million call center workers in the US are going to get replaced by AI. There was a study in The Guardian that said the median African-American household net worth is going to be 0 by 2053, like in 34 years. You guys see that study?
No.
Well, yeah, you should look it up. And so why are they forecasting that African-American net worth is going to go to 0? It's because of this economic tidal wave that is coming. This economic tidal wave is going to wipe out many working class jobs. And it's going to be the equivalent of a natural disaster. And we know what happens in a natural disaster. Who suffers? Poor people who don't have the resources, people of color.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folks. But you never find a white aborigine. Rather, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine. You want to be called an American. Aborigine actually means from the beginning. It's 2 Latin words. Ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning.
Brain HQ is a brain training program with online exercises that target.
Throughout today's society of America, people are suffering from a variety of distractions that are placed in the forefront of the public's eye in order to maintain a particular degree of division amongst themselves. And when it comes to the history of slavery in America, some may feel as though slavery was abolished in 1865, when it was merely upgraded and transitioned into what it is known today as, which is employment. The industrialized version of what President Woodrow Wilson and his administration, along with multiple other co-conspirators like Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and the University of Chicago, just to name a few, created and enacted into law for the benefit of 1% of the people. And their social engineering experiment also included control over things that would affect one's mindset, controlling what is known as American history, religion, science, social media, and public education. In 1909, in front of a large set group of law advisors and educators, President Woodrow Wilson was quoted stating the following: "We want one class of persons to have a liberal education, and we want another class of persons, a very much larger class of necessity in every society, to forego the privileges of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific difficult manual tasks." End quote. In other words, compulsory educational institutions, which does not exclude colleges and universities, were handed down particular curriculums that taught its students how to become industrial providers that will benefit already existing companies of the open market throughout America's capitalist society, while the other class will be provided a much higher quality education, to say the least, allowing its students to think freely and become innovators in having control. Making excellence inclusive rather than inclusive will require revolutionary change, not just in our practices, but also in our mindsets. Dr. Carl Snyder. Now, since you have been made cognizant of how a liberal education was designed for only 1% of the people, that should make you question everything that you were ever taught in school, even if you earned a doctrine or any form of degree for that matter. Because
you notice that they always say to us, question everything, but we don't question nothing. It says question everything. We don't question nothing, even if you were institutionalized. I'm talking about indoctrination with these fine colleges and all these other things. That's an indoctrination. They taught you what they wanted to teach you, but you did not learn about you. Hey, Red Queen, how you doing? But I'm going to take it back a little bit. I'm going to take it back. Hey, Ms. Rod. I'm going to take it back. Don't forget, this is an open panel. I'm going to take it back a little bit. And then I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I want you guys to hear this coon. Check this coon out. Then I'm going to fast forward it.
Interesting to me that under our Constitution and otherwise, that we compensate people if we take their property. Shouldn't we compensate people if they were property sanctioned by the state?
Nobody alive today in 2019 was a slave back then. So what are we getting paid for? Who's getting paid? Why are they getting paid? It's no more than a campaign promise from Democratic hopefuls trying to get some kind of attention out here.
ABL. Listen, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They provide economic restitution to those people. Now, if I came into your house, Mr. ABL, and I stole $1,000 from you and then I died, or if I stole $1 million from you and then I died, would you say, oh, well, Reese died, so the money doesn't matter anymore? No, you would go talk to my children. My children are still living off the benefits of that $1 million.
Just because somebody's granddad stole something doesn't mean I'm responsible for it. If somebody's granddad was a serial killer and then they find out 100 years later, you don't go after the kids and say, okay, you got to go to jail now, or you got to pay back some money because of what your grandfather did. It makes no sense. You know who did it. You should have been able to catch them while they were alive, punish them while they were alive.
We want to focus on is the economic.
Like I said in the beginning, if that 1% got trillions of dollars and majority, no, you just made it. You good, Queen Mathis. And they got trillions of dollars. Them banks you got your money in, you own. Them old hotels and the whole regular Wall Street in New York and all these other places and all of this gas and all these things we own. So you're trying to tell me if they came to you right now and said, hey, this is your family inheritance, this is part of you. Well, if you don't want it, of course you're going to take it if it's trillions of dollars, but the coon that you are, well, are we going to hold them responsible? That's because nobody ain't giving you nothing. But if you don't want nothing, then get out the conversation. There's no need to conversate with you if you don't want anything.
Economic harm that was done to Black people. If we really break down what slavery was, people were brought from across the water to work, and that was free labor. So what we have is generations and years, hundreds of years of systematic discrimination and shutting out of economic access to Black people, and that has to be repaid.
If we're going to blame the government of the USA, even though nobody is alive right. Wait a minute, even though nobody's alive right now, 2019, that was alive back then. And then the thing about it is, who's going to pay it? You're talking about the government. The government is funded by the people. That means me,
now 1%
that means you will pay for it. So how does it make any sense? Like I said, it would have been more
Let me tell you how many times the US
former
government
slave owner paid the slave when reparations would have been due, which is at the end of slavery, not right now. It makes no sense. This whole argument, it's no logic here.
America's never even studied the effects of slavery on Black people. They've never sat down and said, we know that as a government, we sanction this experience, but we don't even know how far that experience reaches because no one's ever studied it. How much do we owe Black people? No one's ever studied it. Why? Because the government has literally buried its head. It's paid out everybody else and turned its back on the Black people in America who have given so much to want to just strive to be a part of this country and with their blood, sweat, and tears.
They paid the money when it was due,
whether it's 150 years. That's irrelevant. The point is the effects
how long
are
are we
still
going to
there.
continue this
They
narrative?
need to be
200 years,
studied.
300 years, 5,000 years? How long are
could.
we going to continue the narrative?
As
At what
long
point
as
do
we
we say
could.
we're past slavery?
We're going to
I really
stop
don't
it
know.
now because the buck stops here. Hopefully my generation will stand up and say that the buck stops here, so we don't have to go on with this any longer.
I know that there's a lot of disagreement, both about whether it should be done and if it were done, how it would be done.
Since you have been made cognizant of how a liberal education was designed for only 1% of the people, that should make you question everything that you were ever taught in school, even if you earned a doctrine or any form of degree for that matter. Because it's not about you being taught the best education possible when you were being taught lies as your education to begin with. It's now beyond black and white issues. It's what's wrong and right issues. For example, over the years, the descendants of the indigenous Aboriginal Niji of Turtle Island, or rather the people that are falsely misclassified as African Americans today, are owed a lot more than just a form of reparations, and those who feel as though they should be paid for their direct ancestors' involvement with the creation and industrialization of the United States of America should be paid. However, just a simple check or lump sum of money given by those who benefited from our ancestors' labor to make amends for the now over 240 years of hereditary damage this capitalist society indulged upon our ancestors does not, in fact, resolve the overall issue. And here's why. Let's take the definition of reparations, for example, the one which is heavily highlighted to the public, stating that reparations is an act of making amends or giving satisfaction for wrongdoing, maybe in a form of payment for damages. But let's look at another definition for reparations, which is an act of repairing or keeping in repair. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Sort of like when you take your car to a mechanic who has plans to fix the initial problem with your car, but somehow more damage is done, so that at a later time you are sure to return to continuously allow that same bad mechanic to work on your car unknowingly. Or I'll give you another example. It's like when you visit your doctor and he or she prescribes you a pill that allegedly cures one problem, but yet it somehow exposes you to several more. This is the problem with reparations. It does not fix the problem. It just covers it up for a certain time period. And yet, the problem still persists. Because in order to fix a problem, we must begin at the root of a problem. This is why it is critically important for our people to know the truth about our past in order to see exactly where the problem began. In my previous documentary called The Untold Truth About Reparations, ADOS, and Slavery in America, I shared detailed information about the Civil War, why and how it was a labor dispute, and I also mentioned that Abraham Lincoln did not free so-called African-American slaves with the release of the Emancipation Proclamation, or Proclamation 95. But what President Lincoln's Proclamation 95 did do, however, was ended the Civil War by quelling the advancement of military troops upon any people or person who did not agree with the United States government. Instead of fighting, it was urged by politicians for people to bring their disputes to Congress, but only through a representative of each state. This is how the United States was established, having learned how to govern the 13 colonies by watching the operations of the previous confederacies our ancestors owned. I will go into more detail about this later on in another segment, but what is important to note here is that in order to restore the Union upon the remaining confederacies that would eventually turn into governments of each state, a set of reparations had to be agreed upon in favor of the copper-colored landowners, sharecroppers, or the Negro farmers, making this one of the main possible reasons why Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. Now, reparations could have been delayed for the people of color due to a few factors. One, a study has never been conducted by any creditable source in order to discover just how much in a form of payment should the employees between 1776 and now be compensated for their binding contracts of forced labor. Two, there were subdivisions doing business as institutions, agencies, banks, and corporations that history fails to mention, who worked as liaisons of the U.S. government, directly involving themselves with funding both sides of the 61 documented wars of the 1800s by creating loopholes and other schemes that forced our ancestors out of their own lands here in America, and also with streamlining the industrialized version of slavery that still exists today. 3, these companies were never held responsible for their actions in a courtroom, which makes it even more reason to reveal who should be held responsible still in order to bridge the gap between justice and equality for the indigenous Aboriginal Neji right now. The majority of bonds that were paid off by employers in order to hire prisoners of war as their new employees were done so by either bartering or loaning contracts out to employers as a form of business credit. This method remains intact still today. A bond is a, quote, promise to repay the principal along with interest on a specific date. Some bonds do not pay interest, but all bonds require a repayment of principal. When an investor buys a bond, he or she becomes a creditor of the issuer, end quote. So since the so-called slave master, or rather the employer, becomes the creditor, and the so-called slave holder, or rather the issuer of the bond, is the investor, then both parties are not only responsible for funding slavery, but should be held responsible for refunding the so-called slaves. Keep in mind that our ancestors were under the impression that they were not working for free, and that this form of slavery or blind capitalism will benefit everyone, especially those who were the majority of the help that literally built America from the ground up due to promises or contracts that were never upheld by the promising parties.
Do y'all understand what's going on here? Do y'all understand what they did? It's like somebody, that's just like a squatter's rights. Except for the squatters now own your house. So be careful who you let stay in your house over 3 days. That's it. Just 2 days, 1 day, that's it. And then they had these documents made and they took over. But y'all gotta listen very carefully how they swindle us.
Hence the term indentured servitude. The noun indenture is a, quote, written formal contract for services, a deed with mutual covenants. So who are these people that should be held responsible for the millions of broken promises, compulsory educational institutions, unpaid laborers, and unpaid military soldiers who fought and died for the uprising of this country, destroyed legacies, cultures, and spiritualities, inequality in workplaces, generational poverty, stolen land allotments, racism, concentration camps turned project housing reserved for only a large median of people of color, identity theft and paper genocide, and many, many years of injustice and discrimination? The answer to this question is very complex and will require me to produce multiple segments surrounding this topic to break it all down. But here's a critical example to make note of. The majority of our people now can recall hearing stories about how their ancestors and even some living elders were former sharecroppers, landowners, or farmers. And the way Hollywood paints the picture of American Indians should make you question why you would rarely see authentic photographs, painted or engraved images of the Hollywood depicted version of American Indians working in the fields anywhere across the southeastern region of North America. So how would millions of American Indians be able to survive if they didn't know how to farm? And for that matter, when did the American Indians have time to set some time aside to teach millions of so-called enslaved American Negroes how to farm? Before these same millions of American Negroes taught the incoming white foreigners from Europe and Africa how to farm? The answer is very simple. The American Indian is the American Negro.
Duh.
Discover your family history.
Duh. It's the American Negro. Duh.
To slave reparations. But just factually speaking, how can you say that? These payments are not for anyone descended from slaves. These are payments, they're not even for black farmers who were discriminated against all throughout the 1900s. They're payments specifically for black farmers who the USDA admits were being discriminated against between 1983 and 1997. So how are these slave reparations?
Well, I've sat on the Judiciary Committee for 8 years. I sat through slavery reparation hearings that were held by Chairman John Conyers, and of course through the hearings here on the Pigford Farms claims. And the motivation that comes from this looks to me like there's no resistance on the part of the proponents to hold back or look for fraud in this. They just simply seem to be content with every black farmer that would apply would get what was defined as Judge Friedman and in his opinion as virtually an automatic payment.
Dr. Boyd, let me just ask you specifically, though, staying on this topic. I mean, Representative King has talked about a hypothetical Johnny who was born on a farm, but quote, went off to the city, became a drug addict, and now wants the $50,000 that comes from the USDA under this claim. How strict is the vetting of these claims?
Do y'all hear that?
First of all, I think that that statement has a terrible racial undertone and very, very offensive to our black farmers. And we need to forget here, we help feed the country. We help feed the world. And we paid our price to be in this country and to own land. And what the government done to black farmers is wrong.
How strict is the vetting? I mean, Representative King is saying just about anybody who's African American can claim to have been a farmer. So how strict is it?
The consent decree says African Americans who farmed or attempted to farm between 1981 and 1997. And the reason we use that definition is that USDA was closed under the Reagan administration. And we went in and investigated and found thousands of black farmer civil rights cases that had never been processed. And that's what this case is about. This case is not about fraud. This case is about bringing justice and equality and fairness to a group of people who deserve it. And it's long overdue justice.
Congressman King, it is pretty shocking when you start to look into what happened in the USDA. I mean, they were literally throwing out discrimination claims, just dumping them in the garbage in some cases. You claimed 75% of the claims now being made in this program by African-American farmers have been fraudulent. You say an unnamed person working for the USDA gave you that estimate. USDA says that percentage is complete nonsense. The FBI has investigated, they say, found only 3 cases of fraud. Where's the proof of this 75% claim?
Well, and John Boyd says that there's no fraud. The FBI or the USDA has reported that the FBI came up with 3 cases that they prosecuted. Now, what is the level of fraud here? I've said that I had a district director who was deployed to Washington, D.C. to help administer the distribution of the first $1.05 billion under Bigford. He came back, he, among others, with stacks of copies of the documents, sick at heart. And he said at least 75% are fraudulent. And so we can't say that there's no fraud here. Here's what we know. Judge Friedman put in his decision, he wrote 40 acres and a mule in his decision. So I'm not making this part up about reparations. That is the words. That's the code words for reparations.
Wait, sir. I've read that decision, and he just started $500. Sir, I've read that decision, and he just used that in a recitation about the history of the interaction between African Americans and the U.S. government and the USDA. He wasn't equating 40 acres and a mule to this program.
Well, and also
let me say, though, Anderson, that he laments that he can't fix all the wrongs of slavery and segregation in one civil rights case. Now he's got a second one.
Mr. King,
I want Dr. Boyd to be able to respond. Dr. Boyd.
Let me talk here. The farmers deserve this restitution. It's long overdue for the black farmers. This is not a rusted judgment. Mr. King has known about this issue. I've testified before him many times before. And this case is about African-American farmers who farmed or attempted to farm, who was discriminated against by the United States Department of Agriculture. And I can tell you about discrimination because I had a county official to spit on me and to tear my application up and throw it in the trash can. And I begged and pleaded with the committee to have that person fired. That person was never fired. He was transferred to another county office to continue to work out his service for the United States Department of Agriculture. And they gave him a big party, a big retirement party. So I can tell you that this discrimination is real, and I invite Mr. King to walk in my shoes and other black farmers' shoes around this country before he pass judgment and refer to him as Johnny or someone that has a drug problem. And I tell you that, Anderson, these farmers have proven their case, and they deserve to have their cases heard based on its merit.
The first document I found was the Aetna slave policy. The Aetna slave policy. The Aetna slave policy.
Insurance company, we own that too. We own Aetna.
As soon as the story broke in the media, they backed down on the restitution.
Aetna acknowledged issuing slave policies during 1850, but denies reparation.
The descendants continue to suffer collective sort of problems. They suffer from extraordinary problems in healthcare, in education, in housing, in every facet of life, infant mortality, life expectancy, in all the areas that speak to the quality of life, the descendants continue to suffer.
And what drives you?
Justice. I'd like to see that the truth is told, and that these corporations that committed horrendous acts against my ancestors pay restitution. They should not be able to keep assets they acquired stealing people and stealing labor.
If our ancestors, and they did, created that wealth, then it seems to me, in a very logical way, that their descendants should benefit from that wealth. Because that wealth having been passed down from generation to generation, companies, foundations, individual families in this nation, it seems to me that those who's directly responsible for creating it, since they did not benefit, notwithstanding the fact that they invested their labor and their lives and all the torture and dehumanizing process that went with slavery, then surely their descendants should, just as the descendants of the wealth on the plantation owner and slave owners, their descendants are still enjoying the wealth. And many companies that came out of the slave period, their economic foundation was based, and stability was based on slave labor and the blood, sweat, and tears of slaves.
Reparations is the moral equivalent of what we're doing, but reparations is, as you know, a resurgent idea on the left. It's certainly popular. At least one.
That Caucasian man was like, "What?"
I think Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren are now calling for reparations. Is that good or bad?
It's the most ridiculous proposal that I ever had.
I hear this ridiculous.
First of all, it's important to deconstruct it a little bit. Reparations, the question is, who pays and who gets paid? People don't realize that it's slavery. There were blacks who owned slaves as well. There were 3,700 blacks that owned 12,000 slaves. Now, 3 tribes, the Chickasaws,
look at his face,
tribes,
what?
The Creek Indians, they own 3,500 slaves. So
Even
the question for me and for the audience should be, well, who pays? Do the sons and daughters of those blacks and Native Americans that own slaves, do their ancestors, do they pay?
Yes.
And so it's a little more complicated than people are making. What about the whites who came here after slavery? What about the hundreds of thousands
We ain't
who
talking
died
about them.
Fighting again in the Civil War who never owned slaves?
Right.
And so
We
I
ain't
just
talking
think
about
that
them
we ought
either.
to take this into consideration when we're talking about slavery. It's also providing exemption from personal responsibility. With all of the problems that Black America has, for someone to say that the answers to those challenges are external. Let's just say we accept the premise that reparations should be paid. What problem does it solve? If whites paid blacks money on Monday and we come back 2 weeks later, what would be the impact on black crime? What would be the impact of drug addiction?
Well, if they paid us our money, maybe we would not spend it all in 2 weeks because they owe us a lot of money. You have no idea how much money they owe us and what we can do with it. The nerve of you to speak against it, thinking about things that happen in, as they want to say, in the little ghettos, the inner cities. The inner cities, we got a lot of good people, Black people out there that work really hard. But it don't matter if they take the money and they flush it down the toilet bowl. Who cares what they do with it? Who cares? Who cares what they do with the money? It's theirs. The same way everybody else spending their money, they want to smoke it up, let them smoke it up. The nerve of you. That's coon number 2.
About the high dropout rate. And so I just think it's lethal for us to just talk about a simplistic remedy so we can do virtue signaling on the issue of race and appear to be champions. What we have done at the Woodson Center is we believe you should look into the Black America's past and find out how our ancestors achieved against the odds where there was racial inequality and income disparity. We built hospitals, we built schools, we had solid families. And so it is important for us to not to look back, but also to look at what are our strengths. And frankly, Tucker, I'm going to say I think Black America needs to abandon complaining about what happened in the past and began to address the enemy within. That's the challenge we face today. And we won't do that as long as we're looking to the people we say who are enemies to be our liberators. And we won't do that as long as we're looking to the people we say who are enemies to be our liberators.
Our enemies are our liberators. Okay. Okay, Grandpa. That's what I was saying, Red Queen. Did you see his face? Like, what?
Being a black male in the South means you can be gay, but you can't be gay. So when I mean gay,
continuing where I left off from the first segment, this is where we shed some light amongst the darker areas of America's history and pinpoint the mistakes that were made that are in desperate need of correction. Mind you, in order to fix a problem, you must first begin at the very root of a problem. Otherwise, you are skipping vital information that could lead us into positive changes in the near future. This is why it is very essential to know the truth about your past. Because if you allow a stranger to tell you all about your past without any valuable sources of creditable documentation, you will inadvertently misrepresent yourself.
They don't even got
and
no
more
pictures with
importantly,
their own kids.
misrepresent everything that your direct ancestors died for.
Thank you. Look at that. We ain't got no pictures with our own kids.
Who are these people that should be held responsible for the millions of broken promises, compulsory educational institutions, unpaid laborers, and unpaid military soldiers who fought and died for the uprising of this country, destroyed legacies, cultures, and spiritualities, inequality in workplaces, generational poverty, stolen land allotments, racism, concentration camps turned project housing reserved for only a large median of colored people, identity theft and paper genocide, and many, many years of injustice and discrimination? The most important persons of value towards this floating debt system would be the victims of sharecropping, the Negro farmers. Agriculture was big business throughout North America, even before the Civil War, and history fails to mention that it was the Negro farmers who were wronged by everyone else involved in the trade of resources and goods. People of today's society of America tends to believe that slavery in America was about some pale-faced foreigner living on a farm or plantation in which he allegedly owned many slaves. And numerous people would suppose that all of those slaves were so-called black people being held in bondage. No. During that time period of the South, the majority of farms were actually owned by people of color. And many of the pale faces known around town were slaving, or rather conducting laborer duties as promised, being as though they were squatters on those farms, which meant that their occupations were to assist the landowners with producing crops and maintaining the farm's livestock, etc. These squatters were later referred to as tenant farmers. This process is known as the system of sharecropping. According to the Webster's Dictionary, sharecropping is defined as a tenant farmer, especially in the southern U.S., who is provided with credit for seed, tools, living quarters, and food, who works the land, and who receives an agreed share of the value of the crop minus charges. End quote. In other words, there was a particular trade relationship between the Negro farmers and the tenant farmers that were now squatting on their lands. And thanks to the likes of public laws, like the Preemption Act of 1841, for example, the Negro farmers were unaware that their lands could now be purchased and claimed by the tenant farmers after just 14 months of residence. The Preemption Act of 1841 granted settlers the right to occupy the Negro farmers' lands legally, but fraudulently, and the government, along with many other co-conspirators, even without permission from Negro farmers, changed these lands to read as public lands due to the establishment of the land banks and the farm credit system, in which I'll get into this shortly. As I've mentioned in my previous segment of this topic, slave contracts, or rather indentures of servitude, were created by banks and business owners, and they were sold with floating debt, or rather credit. But how do you take Negro farmers and then turn them into a slave? Well, you introduce them to the idealism of currency. Today, currency is defined as a system of money in general use in a particular country. The word currency derives from the Latin word currere, which means to run. It is a flow of energy which runs and circulates from person to person. This is why trading was introduced. The term trade is a Middle Dutch word from the late 14th century, meaning track or course. And in order to produce currency through trade, one would use their own energy to run that same track or course. This formal practice was conducted amongst most tribes and or nations of people for quite a while. And in order to make a slave, you would first have to slightly alter the process of the said trade system that was initially utilized by adding in a form of currency. An environment for economic behavior was induced.
Do you see how? I'm telling you. Do you see how they swindled them out of their land and then made them slaves? Because y'all got to remember, black people was here before they was here. So we already knew of the land. We knew about the land. We knew about the seasons. We knew about the land. They came, squatted, and said, well, let me help you. But they knew the law. They knew the law. We just didn't know the law. And then now I'm a slave on my own land, and it's legal.
Upon the trade process, which allowed for the devaluation of the products that were being exchanged. And with this change came a decreasing need for having a great amount of Negro farmers, because any individual could buy from a Negro farmer and sell whatever it is back to the consumers at a higher rate, causing that individual to put whatever price tag they want on that same flow of energy that someone else provided. It's essential to note that this task was very difficult to manifest during much earlier time periods of history across these lands, due to the common use of gold and silver and other things of value that provided a medium of exchange. Originally, there was a bartering system, which allowed for the trade of goods and services in return for other goods and services, but not necessarily being of equal value. And when it comes to the Negro farmers, whatever was needed would have to be purchased directly from the Negro farmer at the farmer's price, due to the pale-faced squatters' lack of knowing how to farm. But with the creation of a credit system and a paper currency, a person could then purchase from the Negro farmer with floating debt, which is credit, and then sell those same crops grown by the Negro farmers to another person at whatever price they choose. This was the birth of what is known as the open market. Any person that takes advantage of this utilitarian method could now also control consumption or depletion, which segues into supply and demand. Note that this was not a quick process of just taking someone's word for a product, crop, or piece of paper. Other forms of currency were set into place first, like silver, gold, and coins, etc., to make purchases and conduct trade for crops and land, because it was seemingly smarter and more convenient to carry a note that somehow held the same value as weight in gold, opposed to actually carrying around a large bag of gold. Shortly thereafter, instead of holding on to large surpluses of crops for trade, people began to do business under promises, literally. deciding to trade in their valuable commodities for promissory notes, making this the biggest mistake ever made in U.S. history without any exaggeration. Multiple promissory notes were circulating during this time period, but they were known around town as greenbacks, then officially became known later on as legal tender notes. This is what began the circulation of a paper currency here in the U.S. In the year 1862, Congress passed the Legal Tender Act, which not only allowed for the finance of the Civil War, but it was also used to ripen the climate for the National Currency Act of 1863, which allowed for the creation of a national banking system. And then there was the National Bank Act of 1864, which required the banks to purchase government bonds, or rather indentures of servitude, which were literally oral or written contracts that stated that labor will be redeemed for these same legal tender notes. And although it is true that the Civil War required a substantial amount of money and credit for the manpower used, most importantly, someone needed for those wars to happen so that those monetary acts could take place. The creation of legal tender notes opened the doors wide to a monopoly and allowed for a small group of people to now have full control of the trade. This small group of people were known as bankers that eventually controlled everything from crops, land, products, and even the trade of people and the government. A legal tender note was the U.S. form of paper money from the years of 1862 to 1971. And many of these legal tender notes were backed by gold, and some of them weren't. That is why someone or some bodies thought it was necessary to replace them with Federal Reserve notes. Starting in the year of 1933, the government made it illegal to own or hoard a certain amount of gold, which was of course more valuable than their legal tender notes across the world. And with Executive Order 6102 becoming law, all gold was called out of circulation, and anyone with gold was ordered to turn it into the Federal Reserve banks. Any persons not adhering to this order by law was subject to hefty fines or imprisonment, or both. Why was this so important to the government? Simply because of the difference between a legal tender note and a Federal Reserve note. One note represents a bill of credit for something received, which was a representation of the government's indebtedness towards the holder, and the other note represents a fiat currency, which is not backed by any physical commodity of the government, non-liable for its use or misrepresentation. This Federal Reserve note has been the main form of currency since the Executive Order 6102 was given in 1933. And it is also important to note that this presidential order stems from the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, which gave the president power to oversee and restrict any and all trades between the United States and its so-called enemies in times of war. All of this falls back on the establishment of the credit and debit system and how the creation of credit scores affected the buying rights of people of color, still to this very day. So, this allowed the government to continue with printing paper money that was not backed by an equal amount of silver or gold. But wait a minute, if paper money is not backed by any previous commodity or any physical security, then what is it backed by? Nothing other than human capital.
And
the root is land. How much land do we own? Land, earth, Well, we were set free, so-called, in 1865. By 1910, the black people who were just set free owned 16 million acres of land in America. Then we built towns on the land that we own. We cut down the trees. We made homes. We were the people that built America for white people. But when freedom came, they didn't want us to be the only artisans, craftsmen, engineers.
We like to think about what's gone wrong in our country as a misunderstanding. You know, we have this dialectic of race relations. We need to heal the divide between the races, you know, as though this is somehow natural, as though it was something passive that just, you know, a miscommunication that just sort of happened. But in fact, what we see is policy after policy after policy of plunder, of taking things from black people and giving them to other people. To argue the case for reparations rests on a really, really simple notion. Would you have taken it's quite simple. It's quite simple.
Some 2020 Democratic candidates are touting their support for reparations for slavery. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and Julian Castro have all.
Hey, Ms. Rod.
Hey, hi, everyone. Hello.
All right, how do you feel about this part one? We got another short one after this, but how do you feel about what you see? I've seen this before, but now I'm listening to a different set of ears. The different
because you know, black people was the first original human trade. You know, that's what the trade Wall Street was really about. So black people was on the market, the first on the market to be traded. And then next thing, you know, when the Caucasian, you know, because, you know, I always say the white man, when the Caucasian people came in, they saw that we was building and we was farming our own land, but they were so deceptive. They was deceiving the black people, which turned those who were free and doing their own farming into slaves, because they just came and said, "Oh, we own the land. How can you own this land when my parents been here, my great parents, great grandparents? You know, it's been passed down to me for all these generations. How do you just walk in here and say that you own it now, and you own the land and everything on it? You know." Well, you know, they call it squatted rights when you live somewhere.
I know you've seen it. They squatted and then they claim I'm going to help you, but in all reality, it's something like a squatter's right. But
them.
And then all these promissory notes. Oh my God, we've been hoodwinked so much, people. We've been hoodwinked. They were just better off saying promissory notes.
And as you was talking about, you know, with the reparations earlier, you know, with the reparations, hi, Black Star, but she having some issues right now. As you was talking about the reparations, a lot of people, you know, they owe trillions of dollars to black people, because if you look back to what they gave the Indians, nothing. Foot Soldier know that we was going to do something about the Indians and the reparations before I had to get off of YouTube. But they sat there and they screwed them Indians. I have a couple of friends, personal friends of mine, who are actually Indians. Like, they own their land, and they said they had to put up with so much from the government. The government controls their money. So how are you going to give them reparations and then break them off monthly? Break them off as they see fit. They still living in bad spots of the reservation. There's only a couple of Indians that are actually billionaires or for the reparations that they receive, but are they really sharing this money with their people? The government control their money. So how is that possible? So if the white man, the government, sorry, if he turns around and says, well, I've been giving this person reparations since they was born, you can't consider welfare reparations. You can't consider SSI or SSD or, that money as reparations. You have to actually give these people back their money. They'll do what they see fit, but you already know they're going to put it back into the economy. Okay, how many houses can a Black person really buy? How many cars? How much jewelry? How much clothes? What they spend their money on is their choice. So they're trying to get a package to where they will include education. All right. One of the ladies that I met like 15 years ago, she applied for her reparation. Okay, she applied for her reparations. She said she was in court, going back and forth to court for years. And then when she finally won, because back then there was the 40 acres and a mule, but now times have been changed. She said when they gave her the land, they gave her land of their choosing, not the land that her parents and her ancestors and stuff was born on. And I said, I'm really interested to see where is this land going to be. Don't be fooled, people. She said it's damn near the desert. Nothing grows in the desert. Nothing grows in the desert. That's the only land that's the only land on earth that's not occupied. Really somewhere that's not occupied. Now solar panels will go good in the desert. As hot as it is, solar panels will be good in the desert. But at the same time, nothing grows there. You can't get piping. There's no water. They're screwing people over. They done built high risers and companies on top of the land that we own. Rightfully, by birthright. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, stay on, co-host. Stay on, co-host.
Yeah, stay on.
Okay.
All gotten on board with the idea. But before we all jump on the bandwagon, let's take a look at what the actual cost could be using those Pickford payouts to Black farmers under the Obama administration. Of course, they were discriminated against by the USDA. Each were given $50,000. It was awarded to over 33,000 farmers or their heirs. So if we apply that same model right now to every Black American and people of multicultural who say they have Black descendants, then we're talking about $2.5 trillion. 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 We're talking about $2.5 trillion.
Continuing where we left off during the second part of this segment, we begin with sharing more details on how this system was designed to benefit only 1% of the people. These ideas of colonization were originally experimented on other people outside of the Americas and carried over to these lands with a more desperate need to succeed at monopolizing an already existing form of trade here. It was said that whoever controls the trade controls the land. And with the creation of currency, the use of shares, stocks, and bonds, along with the implementation of economics and exchange, the Negro farmers would soon lose control of the trade here in the U.S. And subsequently, they also lost control over their lands with the help of the banks. A bank is defined as a retail or commercial financial institution that is licensed by the government to receive and loan money. The word bank derives from the old Italian word banca and then the Middle French word ben banque, in which both words are defined as a table, which is why the etymology of the word bank is defined as a money lender's exchange table or a money box. The term money box was the obsolete sense of the original meaning for the word stock, which also meant a subscribed capital of a corporation. In other words, stock was the term used to describe the movable property of a farm. Now, some of you may feel as though this is in regards to the animals on the farm, like livestock, for example. But unfortunately, it also holds true to the other movable objects on the farm as well, like those that work on the farm, who were also labeled as stock and kept account of.
Yeah.
To be kept in stock meant to be kept in possession of a trader or to be in prison, prisoners of war. And here's why. Paper currency had oftentimes been hard to come by during its earlier days of existence due to the bartering system being widely recognized. Many of the Negro farmers were making purchases literally off of promises. And because certain crops only came once a year, there was a credit system that was used to where things could be purchased all year round. And the money would be paid through the sale of the crop when it was ready to be purchased. Whenever the crop received was lower than expected, or if it was sold for less than it should have been, the farmer would then fall behind on his or her credit.
Ain't that some shit?
Invincible amount of currency owed would be tacked onto next year's amount due.
Oh, ain't
After
that some
so many
shit?
times of this happening, the Negro farmers will be then forced to either get a loan or to sell their farm. What is also very important to note is that in the 1860s was something called the crop lien system, where the farmer would sign over the deed to their farm and still be able to work on the farm to pay it off. However, with the rise of taxes, transportation costs, and storage fees, etc., this became very difficult to do so, which eventually led to foreclosure, allowing for the banks to now own our ancestors' lands.
SOBs.
With the Preemption Act of 1841 already set in stone, the tenant farmers that were squatting on the farms and sharecropping with the Negro farmers were given first dibs on purchasing the lands.
SOBs.
And in many cases,
can y'all hear? Can y'all hear
some
fine?
of you may feel as though this sounds like a fair deal, but what if I told you that these same tenant farmers were already expecting for things to happen?
Can y'all hear the volume fine? Ms. Rod? Hello?
Yes, I can hear it. I hear
it. I know how these problems go. Woo!
Happened the way they did. After being in office for only 3 months as the Vice President of the United States, Andrew Johnson, a racist, bigoted Democrat, became the president immediately after President Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Johnson was also the military governor of the very first state to re-enter the Union after the Civil War, which was the state of Tennessee in the year of 1866. Now, according to whitehouse.gov, he used the state of Tennessee as a laboratory for Reconstruction. So it's no surprise that also in 1866, Johnson sent out a U.S. Department of Agriculture official named Oliver Hudson Kelley in order to survey the South and the agricultural industry, as it was right after the Civil War. And after this survey, Oliver Hudson Kelley responded with the creation of a secret society, very similar to the Masons, but this secret society was formed off of the industry of agriculture. So, with the help of 5 politicians and a banker, Oliver Kelley founded the National Grange of the Order of Patrons of Husbandry in 1867. Grange is an old French word that means granary, barn, or farm, and the term husbandry is defined as someone that manages the conservation of resources, which meant that they were fully intending to take ownership of these farms from the creation of this society. Side note, the etymology of the word bond defines it as a husbandman or householder. The National Grange movement that was said to have been created in order to increase farm profits for farmers, unite Southern and Northern farmers, create co-ops for farmers, and to modernize farming practices. but the Negro farmers were banned from joining this movement.
Well, of
The
course.
National Grain supported the efforts of politicians and advanced several political candidates that were a part of the Greenback Party that allegedly carried an anti-monopoly ideology. The movement encouraged the distribution of greenbacks and worked diligently in order to remove the middleman out of the farming industry, who were the Negro farmers, by playing a key role with the establishment of the farm credit system. In the year 1916, then President Woodrow Wilson and his administration established what is called the FLB, also known as the Federal Land Bank, which is a system of banks that aided farmers in rural communities. Rural is another way of saying open space or open land or country. President Woodrow Wilson's main focus was to enforce a new era in business upon all business entities throughout North America by making drastic changes to the economy, by federalizing all operations concerning the trade. The Federal Land Bank consisted of a total of 13 banks, not 12. Listen closely. Originally, before the Confederate States separated from the Union, the foreigners called these lands the 13 colonies.
Yeah.
And soon after, these rural areas were sectioned off and underlined as estates. Various laws were passed, allowing each estate to have jurisdiction over their government-appointed district. Each Federal Reserve District had its own Federal Reserve Bank, and at the time of its inception, there was a grand total of 13 districts, making it a grand total of 13 banks. So, who was this 13th district that somehow people would overlook? It is the stateless area known today
Washington.
as the District of Columbia,
I know it.
under
I know
strict
it.
control of the U.S. Congress.
I knew it.
More about this in another segment, but I mentioned all of this for a very particular reason. On December 23rd, 1913, 3 years prior to the creation of the FLB, President Wilson signed the Owen Glass Federal Reserve Act, or rather known as the Currency Bill, into law. This allowed for all major European powers to develop centralized control over all banks in the United States and forced only one form of currency to be lawful, which was the Federal Reserve Note. This was a much more modified version of the original Currency Act of September 1st, 1764.
And that's why Kennedy was
all
killed.
Banks in the United States were now controlled by foreign entities, and these foreign entities were rather known as private banks. And these private banks collected interest on monies borrowed, or rather floating debt, by the U.S. federal government. Taxes should ring a bell here. Now, I want you all to note that these foreign entities or private banks do not own any individual banks of the United States, but they do own, however, stock in those same banks or shares, and only member banks can hold those shares. According to the Federal Reserve public records, about 38% of the banks in the United States are members of the Federal Reserve, and due to the currency bill signed by Woodrow Wilson, member banks must purchase shares based on their size alone. So the biggest banks would have the most shares, which would be Citigroup, JP Morgan, and Bank of America. And the largest stockholders of the banks that own shares are Barclays, Capital Research and Management, AXA, Bank of America, Fidelity Management and Research, State Street Corporation, Lazard Asset Management, Morgan Stanley, James Dimon, and Sanford Wheel. As the process of converting all promissory notes to Federal Reserve notes were currently underway, President Woodrow Wilson was quoted stating the following while campaigning his new agenda.
We got sold out. All this off the black man's back. Don't tell me we don't deserve no damn reparations. I wouldn't even have a system without us.
Entered the Federal Reserve System, encouraging even congressional leaders to enact a new banking system and currency reform. Also, during the year of 1916, another piece of the Banking and Currency Reform Plan was underway, which eventually merged the 13 Federal Reserve banks that made up the Federal Land Bank with other banks alike in service corporations. When the merge was completed, it became known as the Farm Credit System, a now fully government-sponsored enterprise, or GSE for short, that still operates as a network of banks that provides lending services to beginning farmers, rural home buyers, agricultural producers, and rural infrastructure providers today. In addition to all of that, they also provide loans or credit for the commercial aspects of rural land, banks within the Farm Credit Bank only, and deals with refinancing, restructuring, rebuilding, and the repurchase of rural real estate for personal use. Let's break down each branch of this farm credit system first. There are 9 farm credit system institution types, which are Agricultural Credit Association, Bank for Cooperatives, Farm Credit Bank, FCS Financial Assistance Corporation, Federal Intermediate Credit Bank, Federal Land Bank, Federal Land Bank Association, Federal Land Credit Association, and Production Credit Association. These institutions are direct lending associations affiliated with one of the 4 banks of the Farm Credit System, who are CoBank, AgFirst, AgriBank, and Texas. There are 6 service corporations performing duties under the Farm Credit System as well, who are the Farm Credit Foundations, Farm Credit Leasing Services Corporation, Federal Agricultural Mortgage Corporation, Federal Farm Credit Banks Funding Corporation, Advantis Incorporated, and Farm Credit Financial Partners Incorporated. This is just scratching the surface of who should be held responsible for the mistreatment of our ancestors, confiscation of our ancestors' lands, along with broken promises that were never upheld by those who created them. Another great example of how this capitalist society succeeded in popularizing industrialization for one's loss and another one's gain is America's most highly favored board game, called Monopoly.
Yep.
On January 5th, 1904, a board game called the Landlord's Game was patented under inventor Lizzie J. Magie, also known as Elizabeth Maggie Phillips, who was the hidden figure behind the idea of the Monopoly board game. As you may recall, that each time this game is played with your family or friends, things would take a turn for the worst near the conclusion of the game. Arguments, long periods of not speaking with each other, possible relationship separations, and so forth, right? Well, that's all due to the fact that this board game was never meant to be a fun, family-friendly type of game. In fact, it's a game of reality. A reality of how this society was established from its inception. Fraud. In a 1936 magazine article of the Evening Star, Elizabeth Magie noted that the game was to be, quote, a practical demonstration of the present system of land grabbing with all its usual outcomes and consequences, end quote. Author Ruth Hall wrote that the term land grabbing, quote, obscures vast differences in the legality, structure, and outcomes of commercial land deals and deflects attention from the roles of domestic elites and governments as partners, intermediaries, and beneficiaries. According to the Webster's Dictionary, the noun land grab means, quote, a usually swift acquisition of property, such as land or patent rights, often by fraud or force, end quote. This is not just some simple board game. As it does, however, exposed the duplicities of a federal currency system and the malevolent implications of capital accumulation by taking land and building an empire from the labors of those who were cheated.
Ooh. Before we get to the next setup and our last setup of the night, Ms. Rod, speak on it. Hello? Ms. Rod?
Yeah, I'm here. You know, with the land.
What about this video, period? Like I said, I know you probably heard it, saw it, or whatever, but I have a different set of ears. Please, tune off on how you feel about what we see so far.
You know, so far the monopoly.
And if it wasn't something like with all these different things, what was it that was new to you?
The 13 colonies that I did know about that, the 13 banks. And what it was, because the Federal Reserve was the overseer. I'm gonna say it was the overseer of all the banks. They got very greedy. And they had put a monopoly on all the banks worldwide. So like if the South wanted to go to war with the North, they supplied both of them money, ammunition, guns. Same thing
that's the next one. But you on the road. On a roll. You on a roll. You are definitely on a roll.
Oh, I love him. The one you get right show right now. I love him. And so therefore, the land grab, like they said, they taxed them. They couldn't pay with their taxes because all they really cared about was feeding their families. And then, with the taxing, they grew the food that they ate. So now you want me to grow even more just so I could pay you taxes. And when you couldn't pay taxes, they wanted to sit up there and put liens. This is where the original liens come from. The liens on your houses, they foreclose all their land. You see, the white man made up these rules to keep Black and brown and other people under. They never want us to rise. They always want us under. Just like a lot of times you'll see the Monopoly board, but the Monopoly board was built on Black and brown's backs, and they played the game on top of our backs. And that's to sum up a lot of stuff that happened. So anytime you see the game Monopoly, you already know. You already know all that land and real estate and everything. They took all of it. And as many quote unquote millionaires and the 2 or 3 billionaires that the Black and brown have in the world, this 1% is only 1%. So who do you think got the other 99% of it? Don't sit up there and say, quote unquote, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey's a billionaire. The person who gave Oprah Winfrey her money is some people like Bill Gates. They got billions to spare. Billions. Trillions. So he didn't yet make a trillionaire, but they have the products. All these things are being made in another country, made cheap, and then sold to us for 3, 4, 5 times the amount. Just like with the currency that they showed, they got tired of giving out promissory notes, so they put the currency. People don't understand how much the currency has actually changed in 2020. 2021, back in 2005, really, because if you go back to the war real quick, that the United States was in with Iran and Iraq and all those little third world countries, when they got Saddam Hussein, all the money that they found, crates and crates and crates and crates of money all over the doggone country, was all in big face. I'm gonna say what my people on YouTube say Allah. How the hell they got all our money in big face and that money wasn't even circulated in the United States yet? Okay. On to the next video.
Woo! Yeah, because being that you brought that up, so I know you're gonna have good commentary for this one. If this is the right one.
I love this guy, yeah.
I'll be picking out stuff. Hopefully I picked out the right one.
in the context of a much broader discussion about white privilege, white innocence, white American identity, and it's much more complicated than that. And I go at African American culture's contradictions as well. And then in the end, when I'm making suggestions about what can be done, many white people approach me and ask me, what can I do? Not in terms of the broad social transformation out there in the world. We all believe in that or argue about it, redistribution of resources or not. But when people ask me, what can I as an individual do? One of the things I suggested, besides being educated, besides participating with other African American and Latino and other brothers and sisters in social movement, is to do something called an individual repair of inequality.
I started Brain HQ because
they feel inclined to do so. This is for people who are so inclined to seek out a way to compensate individually for what they think is a systemic injustice. So I talked about buying kids computers, being able to take kids to school, to tutor them, to be able to do individual things that are tailored to their desires and aspirations, such as becoming professionals, exposing them to things they wouldn't ordinarily see. So in other words, it's a kind of ethic of compassion joined to a sense of conscience that motivates them to do what they're motivated to do.
Well, so I support a lot of that. I mean, I believe in charity. What I don't believe in is collective guilt. And that's why I'm confused by the phrase white privilege.
Well, white privilege doesn't suggest guilt. It suggests responsibility and accountability. The same accountability that America talks to about people pulling up themselves by their bootstraps and addressing their situations, their communities as being responsible for doing what they're doing. I don't believe in collective guilt, but I do believe in collective responsibility.
Responsibility and guilt are synonyms in this case. And let me just ask, let's be specific. So privilege. I'm privileged, and I wouldn't deny that, not because I'm white, because I have a good paying job. But you're privileged too.
Of course.
So we live near each other in a nice neighborhood. You're rich. You went to an Ivy League school, unlike me.
Here we go with this bull
and
crap.
so you're way more privileged than most white Americans.
Well,
so why would they open
But it's not
something?
well, first of all, privilege is contingent upon the context in which it's defined. So individual cases could have an imbalance that people of color could be way more privileged, as you talked about, than the average, say, white person. But remember, during Jim Crow, Jackie Robinson was more privileged than most white people in terms of having the ability to make a good living on a job, but he was still denied access to a water fountain. His kids still couldn't go to the same school. So I'm saying to you that your argument then seems to be rather vulnerable to rebuff, because it doesn't mean economic accumulation can prevent you from experiencing what are essentially racial inequalities. So the amount of money you have doesn't do that.
Yeah, and in 1955, I think that was much truer than it is now.
Well, even now, when we talk about the disparities in terms of people's achievement, a study was done by Diva Pager at Princeton University that said a black person with a college education had less of a chance to get a job than a white person who had gone to prison. So even now, I'm not talking about 50 years ago, I'm talking about this is going on right now. The disparities are very real.
Right. So if I live in Eastern Kentucky and I am unemployed, why am I more privileged than you? And why am I in any way, as you put it, responsible for problems of people I've never met on the other side of the country?
Look, I mean, we know that larger forces provide people opportunities or disadvantages. When you come, many people say, let me even stretch it even further. Some people say, look, I came to this country 20 years ago. I came to this country 30 years ago. I wasn't advantaged directly by the system of enslavement that prevailed in America. But if you come to this country as an immigrant and you're a white immigrant and you inherit certain privileges associated with people who are already here, that means that privilege extends to you regardless of the fact that you indirectly benefited from it and you did not directly contribute to inequality. The Constitution was written a long time ago, so was the Declaration of Independence. But those ancient documents continue to inform people's lives and shape their aspirations.
So let me flip it around. And let me just also note there's a lot of hostility in what you're saying. And I'm sure you'll say there isn't, but obviously there is.
Not at all.
I think it's pretty clear.
It's a recognition of the situation. It's pushback on whiteness that is usually not called out.
Clearly hostile. But leaving that aside, I'll flip around for a second.
Black men always got to be hostile.
Comes here, I'm resettled from Somalia at public expense, high public expense. Am I due these reparations too?
I think that the people who have benefited from systemic inequity in this country have been overwhelmingly white brothers and sisters. And what I'm talking about is a direct relationship to a notable and a documentable and an empirically verifiable system of inequality. There's nothing that's very obscure about that. And I'm saying to you that people of color who are here now, who have inherited that legacy as a result of their black skin and their relationship to black culture, have to be acknowledged.
Well, wait,
my book is not simply about reparations. You reduce
I know that it's not, but
so much
it's
larger
heavily
and bigger
about
than
privilege. But let me just really
about
quick, we're almost out of time.
It's about white refusal to acknowledge
If a
responsibility.
majority white country brings in a black African at its own expense, they still owe him reparations for slavery?
No, I'm talking about the people who are here. That's an isolated event. I'm talking about the majority of African American people who are here, who are part and parcel of what this country has been, and who have built it in its institutions to become what it is now.
For to see that many of you took a lot of what I stated in my last video and immediately began to research further along. Lots of you have hit my inbox in reference to what I shared about the differences between immigrants and immigrants, for example, and I am
It's gonna make you think. Sit there and call him hostile. He's hostile because you up there asking, well, why can't you get reparations? First of all, the Jews got reparations. I'm tired of people telling me, oh, you need to get over it. You need to get over it. Get over what? My skin is going to be this color it is for the rest of my life. Your skin is going to be your color for the rest of your life. How are you going to tell me to get over something when my people are still not being paid? My people is still in somewhat bondage. We are we are still in a form of slavery because we don't have land, we don't have education, we don't have the money, we don't have economics. Matter of fact, one of my sons called me earlier today and he asked me, he was like, well, Mom, I know we didn't have it bad as some people have it, but why you never taught us about economics and about the stock? I said, I did try to explain to you about that. That's why I made sure you went to college, because what they taught me was nowhere near. They taught me how to use my hands. They taught me electrician, plumbing. They taught me all the manual labor stuff that you learn in schools under the skilled trade before they took them out of the schools. So I knew that you needed to go to college so you could learn about the economics. I went through college with my son and stuff, but I didn't have to pay. I learned from him. I read his books that he came home with. That's how I educated myself, by reading his books. So if I want to say I got a 4-year college diploma, mentally, I do. If I want to say I got a doctor's degree, mentally, I do. Because I read and I understand and I comprehend. Back to reparations.
I'm very, very pleased with those of you who knows that a 3.5-second Google search is not real research, but would be considered that way by some, only if that individual is limited with expanding their leads and, of course, resource materials. So I'll share more information about it now. The 1828 Webster's English Dictionary states that the noun immigrant, spelled with the letter E, is, quote, one who removes his habitation or quits one country or region to settle in another, while the noun immigrant, spelled with an I, is, quote, a person that removes into a country for the purpose of permanent residence. Now, subscribing to the standard definition of these words makes you conclude that they both mean the same. But most of you who are cognizant of the spells of the English language would know better. Some of you would notice that the definition of immigrate with the letter E would determine that it means exit. And the definition of the word immigrate, spelled with the letter I, would determine
enter.
that it means to come into, due to both Latin origins of each word. But here's the problem with that. A country is not a continent, and a continent is not a country, state, nor region of a territory. You can recall that in the first video, I shared that the definition of the word immigrant, spelled with the letter E, means people who moves from one region of a country to live in another region of that same country, which derives from its etymology, to remove from one state to another state or territory. This is not hard. Region, be it the states of the country called North America. But isn't North America a continent? Or is it really? But that's for a different time. America is being considered as both by lots of people right now, taking the advice of strangers without managing to actually look it up for themselves. Even the etymology of the word immigrate, spelled with the letter I, informs you that it means to, quote, pass into a place as a new inhabitant or resident. Listen closely. To move to a country where one is not a native for the purposes of settling permanently there. Now, does that sound peaceful to you all or something? It says for the purpose of settling permanently there as a resident and not a native of that landmass. This is why the word remove was used in Webster's definition, because there were wars going on here. And if you become a prisoner, then things get taken away from you. Confiscated. Prisoner of war. You may have heard me mention this multiple times already, but I know some of you newly incoming viewers might not know it yet, and that's fine. This is the reason why I share even more detailed information when I feel as though you may haven't gotten around to researching it just yet. So with all things considered, the driving principles of the ADOS agenda reveals it as, yes, another distraction. A distraction from the actual proof of whether you are an American descendant or an African descendant of slavery, or neither. Slavery did not happen the way we were all told throughout compulsory educational institutions that derived directly from the Reconstruction era of the 1900s. There were political and commercial groups, businesses, and banks who were responsible for granting permission to anthropologists and the power of eugenics to create, cultivate, and influence the reconstructed history they gave to you. The narrative that you are accustomed to now stems from employees of those who wrote the manuscripts you draw from. Slavery used in its proper context is simply labor, servitude. This is why most people would commonly believe today that slavery was abolished in 1865, when it was merely upgraded and transitioned from a bondage standpoint to an industrialized version that runs parallel along the lines of capitalism. In other words, they gave you forced schooling in order to indoctrinate you with whatever it is they want you to know, in order to make you think slavery was one way, when in reality, slavery is still ongoing the exact same today as if it was in the past. Employment. There were no chains and shackles then, and there are no chains and shackles now, at least not visibly, because some of you failed to realize that the chains and shackles were placed upon your mindsets. What is the Emancipation Proclamation? Many of my viewers will recall it as the time when President Abraham Lincoln freed all of the slaves of North America. Multiple history professors and scholars would agree with you. Even some websites would state that the Emancipation Proclamation, or Proclamation 95, changed the federal legal status of more than 3.5 million enslaved African Americans in the designated areas of the South, from slave to free. However, when you actually read an original copy of Proclamation 95, you will not find any legislation throughout the context of the document where it clearly states that it was created in order to free blacks, coloreds, or African Americans from slavery. Proclamation 95 was a call to end existing public upheavals and riots that were taking place during that time period over a labor dispute. Complaints were arising from the laborers who worked long periods of hours for little to nothing nowadays, or for being promised something for their labor, but the other party didn't hold up to their end of the bargain, gradually transforming the laborers into prisoners of war, realizing that they were being used in order to create and establish the 13 colonies. In fact, the funds which were needed in order to maintain and regulate the 13 colonies were not being generated. So this forced 11 of the southern states to back out of a bad business deal, succeeding themselves from the Union. Then a new union was created, called the Confederate States of America. However, in order to keep the membership of these confederacies, they imposed limitations upon the resigning party's rights, just like any union would today. This was all done through a proclamation to blockade southern states from trading along the waterways. And by doing this, the United States government was able to stop commerce and shipments of products such as rice, corn, grain, and tobacco, just to name a few, from leaving the southern regions of the United States. When I mentioned a bad business deal earlier, this is what I was referring to. And so now you know what the Civil War was truly about. It was a civil dispute amongst employees that were tired of being treated unfairly within their place of employment. It was all about civil rights, inequality in the workplace, fights over improper land grants, tariffs, and trade disputes among settlers and squatters. All gave way to a secession of Confederate states and a broken union. In its simplest form, this was merely a labor dispute.
Brush your teeth in less than 30 seconds.
Again, you know, when you go back to the money, it's a trail. It's definitely a trail, and the trail leads always to the same place. It's a circle. So now, Washington, D.C., they are beginning to fight the Congress and the government because now they want to become a state. They don't no longer want to be District of Columbia. They want to become a state. And this is a problem. This is a problem. Okay. Tony, play.
Dang it, I'm on mute again. I did all this talking. Y'all got to let me go. That's my joke of the day, to talk to you guys on mute. Oh God, I repeat it now. I think in this next part they're gonna go into what you just was saying, and you notice where you see housing authority, which used to be camps. Now they called it housing authority, where they threw us all that. But I think they're gonna go into what you were saying previously. They're gonna talk about.
Also, what I wanted to say also was we got into one of your other lives a couple of days ago or yesterday or the day before. They sat up there and you know, nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. Now we got FEMA camps all over the place, converting big Walmarts into FEMA camps. You know, the ex-president of the United States separating families, putting people's children inside these camps. They were starved. There was no undernourished. Half of them couldn't speak English. Half of them didn't speak at all. They didn't even speak Spanish. They lost their native tongue. You know, he needs to be going to jail for crimes against those children alone. Against those children. It was a lot of them children. I mean, thousands of them he had in the FEMA camp. Talk about, and he sent their parents back to their country, But see, one thing a lot of Black people have to understand, no matter how much crime they accuse us of doing, or the things that we have done wrong in the past, we are the only people that cannot be deported. We cannot be deported. So if a white person says to you, go back to where you came from, excuse me, you can't even send me back to where I came from because I'm on my own land. I'm on my own land. United States of America belongs to the Black and the brown. Whether you be Indian, whether you be Spanish, Dominican, we're all the same. We're all the same. So when you say, oh, you think I belong to Africa? Excuse me? Excuse me?
Okay,
See, somebody, a white person said that to me, they get punched in the face. Because I'm going to give you a reason. You say some crap like that, I'm going to knock you out.
Black Cosmos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and don't forget you're gonna have to watch the replay because we got like 15 minutes of this left. And K Money, no, you're not the only one that talks when it's muted. I do it every day, all day. We're gonna get to that point, Ms. Rob was talking about if this the right one. But you guys don't forget that it's not just about Black History Month. I just got tired of what we was learning in Black, because we're going to continue this. We're going to continue talks. We know even if it's all been said before, we're going to say it too. Hey, that our generation has things to say too. And even if it doesn't change nothing, at least we get a chance to voice how we feel. So that's therapy in itself, of us voicing how we feel about the situations. You know, take it how you guys want to take it. Y'all may want to take, like was in the last video, he broke down all these different things. Y'all may want to go back and read upon it so you can know what all these fake agreements and stuff was. But these are very good history lessons, and I hope that you guys share this with your children.
Labor camp, while families were preparing to move north, there was still some work in the bean fields. Children, as usual, were left to fend for themselves.
Jerome, how old are you?
9.
9? Do you go to school?
Yeah.
Where do you go to school, Jerome?
I did it over Children Elementary School.
I see. What is your sister's name?
Lois.
That's Lois. And what are your other sisters' names?
Damn it.
Yeah. Beulah.
Catherine and Beulah.
Beulah.
What happened to your foot, Jerome?
Dig a nail in out there by the wash house.
So you drove a nail in out by the wash house. What did your mother do for that? Where do you sleep? You have this big bed?
Yes.
What happened? How did you get that hole in that bed there, Jerome?
Rats.
The what?
Rats.
Now, Jerome,
That's in
you are
housing
taking care
authority.
of Kathy, of Beulah, and Lois.
Yes.
Now, are you going to give them lunch today?
Yes.
What are you going to feed them?
I don't know.
Do you have any food here to give them?
Yes.
What time does your mother come home?
I don't know.
The following day, Arlene King, the mother of Jerome, Kathy, Lois, and Beulah, again was picking beans.
Aileen King, I saw your children yesterday at the Okeechobee camp. Why didn't you put them in the nursery?
I don't make enough to pay for it.
How much does it cost to put them in?
85 cents.
85 cents.
That's right.
Aileen, what time did you come out the field this morning?
6 o'clock.
What time would you get home?
About 3:30, 4 o'clock.
6 this morning to 4 o'clock this afternoon.
That's right.
How much did you earn?
$1.
$1?
That's right. $1.
One damn
The
dollar.
beans were poor quality.
10 hours.
That's right.
Has this happened before?
That's right.
How much will your food cost you today?
About $2.
Aileen, how old are you?
29.
How many children do you have?
14.
How old were you when you first started working in the fields?
8.
You've been working 21 years in the fields?
That's right.
Aileen, do you ever think you'll be able to get out of this kind of work?
No, sir.
The Civil War was a labor dispute that was inevitably tied to American Indian lands. And for this reason, a scheme was devised where the people on the bottom will be able to create a flip-flop that resulted in their eventual rise to the top. More about this in my documentary series called African Americans Are a Big Threat to American Society. But I stated that to say this: our people were always home, even when the Industrial Revolution began. Our ancestors were the ones prospering. We owned the lands, lakes, rivers, businesses, and the banks. And most importantly, we were well aware of how and where to get the resources needed to sustain the continued growth of our success and the success of Turtle Island, aka North America. So, how does an immigrant remove an indigenous person and replace themselves as a permanent resident?
Do you realize that there was an agreement made between our people way before the people without color got here? The black people agreed that they would sacrifice and do the slavery thing for us, or we would have been completely wiped out. We owe them such a debt. Don't be caught up in American racism. They don't want us to unite and be together because they're afraid of that we'll treat them the way they treated us. We're human beings. We could never be that thoughtless, and we don't have to worry about that because from the way things look, they're going to self-destruct. A lot of them are spinning out of control. We're not even going to have to do anything. We might have to put a few of them out of their misery, but...
According to a well-known anthropologist by the name of Margaret Mead, you don't come into a place with an attitude of entitlement, because people generally enjoy when you learn their language and their culture. As long as you come into a place ready to learn and join their society, it's okay. It's very flattering for all people when someone wants to be taught. And also, Margaret Mead stated, quote, "You have to do something pretty terrible to people before they come to regard you as a spy, rather than an interested explorer." And that is exactly what they did when they adopted our ancestors' constitutions and created confederacies that reflected our ancestors' form of government. The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union was a set of laws which was used to form the first U.S. government in the year 1777. This was based on the information learned by the foreigners and through Indian relations. Each Indian tribe had its own confederacy and its own constitution, and they had a commander, which was the chief. This form of government allowed for the individual sovereignty of each tribe to take place and not to be imposed upon. It also allowed for trade relations outside of the tribe to take place amongst those who are the heads or chiefs of the tribe or clan. And this is the idea that the 13 colonies took for themselves. They created the Articles of Confederation, not as colonies, but as confederacies. There was a confederacy for each state, and this is why there is also a constitution for each state. This is also why when they separated from the Union that they called themselves the Confederate States of America. The colonies of the United States created a confederacy and a union which had the duty to, quote, "enter into a firm league of friendship with each other for their common defense, the security of their liberties, and their mutual and general welfare, binding themselves to assist each other against all force offered to or attacks made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatsoever." And they used a formal setting known as Congress to resolve their disputes. Congress is defined as a formal assembly of two or more representatives, ambassadors, or nations that comes together to discuss problems. Sound familiar? the House of Representatives, Congress, a commander-in-chief. And because these foreign confederacies were so few in numbers alongside the large amount of Indian confederacies, they decided to form a union, which is short for trade union or labor union, that ensures they would always be together for a common purpose. In most cases, the American Indian clans or tribes allegedly agreed to sign treaties with foreigners, or rather a foreign government, to ensure peaceful cooperation between themselves, dating back to the latter part of the 1770s. This is also around the time when our own people were pitted against each other for the purposes of disloyalty and betrayal and the colonization of our people through paper genocide. Of course, this was all politics. So the start of the Civil War was the very first government shutdown because it was declared a state of emergency, whereas the commander-in-chief takes supreme authority and decides what could possibly settle the dispute and get everyone working together again. All of this leads back to the Emancipation Proclamation. And according to the original documents, which is listed in an exhibit for the National Archives, it reads that on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then thenceforward and forever free. It also states that, and I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free to abstain from all violence unless in necessary self-defense. And I recommend to them that in all cases when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. Which truly lets you know that slavery, as we were all taught in school, is royally incorrect. Because you can't let a slave know what slavery was all about. Then that person will realize that he or she may still be a slave now. I'm just here to make you think.
Gosh, dang it, I'm on mute again. Okay, I gotta start this switch over. This channel is to make you think, and hopefully we will bring in more stuff like this. But oh no, Ms. Rod, where you go? Where you go? Where did you go? Where did you go, my lovely? I want to know. Carter, there's nobody thinking about you. Oh, this dog. Oh. Yeah.
About you. Oh, this dog. Oh. Carter, I'm going to come get you.
Yeah. He's obsessed with my neighbor and not me. You can knock on my door, kick and everything. That dog won't say nothing. My neighbor here, I'm like, who house you live in? But like I said, these are to make you think, and these are also things that even if you do know, you may want to pass it on to your kid or something. But how did you feel about this last video, Ms. Rod?
Well, I know growing up that my mom, she had bank accounts in Black Bank. The Carver banks. And, as far as the public housing, it was way below standards, of course. And so she worked and made $1 a day, and who knows if they was charging her 85 cents per child or 85 cents for the children. She had 14 children. 14
And they had
children. She said she had.
85 cents a child.
Right. So I think it was 85 cents a child, 85 cents per family. I don't know. But, you know, a lot of these things, like I said, coming through the pipeline has still made us slaves, because how is you going to go to work and you making minimum wage and the babysitter charging you minimum wage? So it's like, it's kind of rough. It's kind of hard. I'm not going to say back then it was okay to have 14 kids or 13 or 10 or whatever have you, but the fathers was out there either working hard in the fields to where they never came home, or they was actually in jail in some form of way, or making another family in another community somewhere, you know. So
it could have been sold off to somebody else too.
Of course.
So now she's stuck with it, and then it's just the question is this what nobody gives the black woman credit for.
The black woman was still the leader, the head of the family, and also definitely becoming a breadwinner, because the black man was not in the household again. So it's like, I don't know if you're going to do something on, you know, why he wasn't or whatever, but 6 cents per child. And she, right, so she had 85 cents. She done 14 kids, Red Queen.
It's sad to say that the hatred that this new group of black men have for us, it's really hard to find good videos of our struggle. Every time they speak upon our struggle, they speak upon us in multiple kids, multiple daddies, and welfare. I mean, that's the main thing you're gonna find. They don't show. I've been looking mighty hard, but I mean, we could discuss it ourselves. You know, we're gonna definitely have things where we discuss it ourselves. But I'd love to show little bits and pieces. But only thing you find about us, that's degrading. My grandmother was 114. It was more acceptable. Yeah, they didn't have no TV or nothing, and that was the only release you had to feel good for the day, Red Queen. You had a hard day, and hey, that woman and that man, they had to find a way to feel good.
And that's why, you know, our history is so confusing. It's confusing because the lies that they told on our history, they made it seem like, oh, we was brought here from Africa, we was enslaved, and now we're here. No, that's not how it was. We had education, we educate, we build, and when they saw how good the black man was building, they said, now with the civil, because we're going back to the last video that she showed with the Civil War. So that's what people understand. Civil War is about being in the same place, fighting against each other. So the North was fighting against the South. The banks made the money because they supplied both the North and the South with weapons and guns and people and stuff. So they made double the money, the banks. So now someone wins, someone losing. The Civil War was about not having the black men take their white people jobs. That's why they was fighting. And it was fighting so that they can establish unions. Okay, because if the black man is doing the same job and better, why not hire the black man? Why not hire the person that's better for the job instead of for the color of their skin? And that still goes true to today.
But if
I know plenty of people.
If I stole the land from you by what the squatters' right, I'm just gonna call it squatters' rights because we're all familiar with what squatter rights is. But if I stole the land from you and then I wrote up all these new laws and legislators and everything, of course I'm gonna put my people. I'm gonna put my people there. I'm not worried about you. I just stole it. Now, if you want to work there for $1 and work 10 hours a day for $1, come on. But far as that, all the work that they did, and then it being, put to New York, because certain things we don't grow, and sent here and sent there, They the ones made all the profit, while we still was, like she said, she still was working as a slave for $1, and then they put you in
Correct.
house. As you see back then, I was gonna say New York City housing authority. So they had that plan a long time ago to keep us together as animals.
All they did was sit up there and regenify it. Every year, every time they just up it a little better, make it look a little better, make it a little better. Because I've seen some public housing in places. I'm like, what? This supposed to be the poor part? This is the poor part. How is the poor part? And they got better stuff than I've seen in cities. So the city living and the rural living is a little different. But back to the reparations, I'm gonna tell everybody, if you can, buy Claude Anderson book. He taught me so much about our people, the truth, and he gives you in that book documents and facts where you can actually look up. And he's also leading the fight on reparations as well. Dr. Claude Anderson, he also worked as under many presidents of the United States, and he's a servant for our people to get these reparations. And then Don Johnson, he was off by a couple of trillion, but he's doing his thing as well. Ice Cube with the paperwork that he put up for the Black people, that was, I mean, you gotta read it. I know a lot of people feel reading is unnecessary, but when you take your time and you read some of these documents, and you'll have a better comprehension of what's going on. So as far as with the reparations, I also read, I'm like, are you serious? So now they're trying to do our reparations as Black people the same way they did the $5 Indians, quote unquote. And that's why the $5 Indians were so much richer than the actual Indians.
Oh, so now, yeah.
Okay, so now what they're doing with that is that they want us. How are we supposed to prove that we're Black? My phone is doing all kinds of special things. How are we supposed to prove that we're Black?
You mean our ancestors were from either here already or bought here. So they made sure. Well, I mean personally, they're not giving us that reparations, because then all them things that they named, they gotta change all of that.
A lot of people don't understand. Obama was a problem. Okay. Why Obama was a problem? Because he was more for the white man than the color of his skin. And as the 8 years went by and left, I have actually seen Obama talk more raw cut and more for his people now that he's no longer president than he did when he was president. Okay. Obama sit up there and he signed the bill to send billions of bad vaccinations over to Africa, made Africa sit up there and say they're going to support gay marriages, turn around again and then said that, they're going to accept the gay leaders. Most of these leaders of all these countries are gay. They're gay or they're Jews. It's not about ish. It's not about being it's not about giving the reparations to. And then this thing, when it came up with, first of all, Black people was called many different names. I forgot what year, but then Jesse Jackson invented African American. Okay, and then everybody's head got more twisted up. How am I going to claim a place I've never been? How am I going to claim a place my mother never been? So for us as Black people and brown people of the United States of America, what the Statue of Liberty say? Give us your poor, give us your weed, give us your this, give it. All these things don't really apply to us because we are actually, as you said, Ray Queen, Aboriginal. This is our land. This is our land. Regardless of what part of the other people sold us to and fro, this is our land. What did Malcolm X say? We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. The white man came and said, oh, these people, They so happy, let's take it. They don't know what guns are. They don't know. When you go back to Shaka Zulu, how Shaka Zulu had these white men terrified because they had guns, but these people was fighting with their spears and and they blades and stuff. In different countries, they taking over governments with freaking rocks. Taking over governments in other countries with rocks. Throwing rocks and sticks and bricks and stuff. And here it is, we in America, we sit there and we go to jail for a peaceful protest, but people go and attack the Constitution, go and attack the Capitol. But yet nobody's being held accountable for the attack on the Capitol? You mean to tell me that I can go and say, I don't like the vice president and da-da-da-da-da, and my whole crew go and get them, and I'm not going to be held accountable for saying, maybe he's not a nice guy. That person who gets held accountable?
Foot soldier says to you, yes, ma'am. He's done a lot of wicked things when he was in office, a lot of executive orders.
Executive orders. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then it's like, he said, okay, I'm going to admit, I did not vote for him the first time. Why? Because I didn't like what he said when he was running. My people voted him for senator, but for the first time, when he became president of the United States, he clearly stated, and I swear to you, he said it out of his own mouth. If I have to go find that video, I'm going to find it and send it to you. He said, I will not be the president that gives Black people reparations. Why would you say that? Why would you actually put that on record to all your Black people to know? And then you put out the slogan, yes, we can. Yes, we can. I said, no, I will not. No, I will not. I ain't vote for the other guy either. I voted for the people that was on that ticket that did deal directly with us. I voted for mayor. I voted for governor. I voted for senator. I voted for community. I voted for borough president, councilman, anybody else other than the president of the United States that deals with us. Because a lot of people have to understand the chain of command of government. How can a sitting president sit up there and almost, and I'm going to say it, almost get the whole entire government assassinated with the exception of himself? We talking about the whole entire Congress, the senators, the governors, everybody that runs the country of the United States was in that house. I told y'all to watch that show. I told y'all, watch that TV show called Designated Survivor. That came on a couple of years ago. And look what happened. The show was about the Capitol getting bombed, killed everybody in the Capitol, president, vice president, everybody in the Capitol. And it was one person. There's always one person that is not supposed to be at those meetings. One person. Nobody knows who that one person is. It's that one person. That if the government shut down or something happened with the entire government, they will be leader. They was mad with Nancy Pelosi, being Democrat. They was mad at Nancy Pelosi or whatever her name is, because if President so-and-so died of coronavirus, we wasn't so lucky, but the vice president did not step up. She's third in command. She's third in command. So, the chain of command, and the vice president have to go into hiding. Why is it possible that the vice president of the United States is in hiding? Because of these people that his own president put out to get him. How is that possible? Where does this happen at? Where does this happen at? United States just became a third world country. A lot of people don't understand that. The United States is not the powerful company that it used to be. I don't know if it ever was a powerful country because of all the stuff that they put their Native Americans through. But now we are a third world country because when that happened, the whole entire world saw that. All right, I'm done.
Oh, goodness. I think tomorrow we're going to be talking about the breach of the civil rights movement, and something else that I might throw in there. I like to hit y'all with surprises. But we're going to talk about that. But I definitely want to find, because majority of the things I do find with women, which I realize why they don't talk about it, because they had to turn us against one another. And majority of the videos I did see of women, we was the shot callers and stuff. We was the one that was outsmarting the white man. We was the one that was getting finding places for our people. We was the ones with the businesses. With the business mind. We was the one that was doing everything that the black man couldn't do. So instead of us saying how strong our black women are, they diminished us and made us just welfare recipients. But there's a lot of videos of strong black women, but it doesn't state. I can't find none of what we went through in slavery. You'll hear what the white man went through, the black man went through, but you won't find that. But you will find strong women, and I think the men are still mad over that. Like everything that we do, they're still mad about. So they made it more about what's going on today. Most of the bills is what's going on today, about all the disrespect of our foolery and destroying our sons. And listen, if it's only one parent in the house, you can't talk about what we did to our kids. If you wasn't there, you have no right. Oh no, you don't have to catch. Oh, Five Point, I got to catch the replay. But I rewinded it for y'all people that came in. But if y'all did enjoy this session of our never-ending Black history, I'm not going to say Black History Month, but it's going to be a never-ending. We're going to be having a lot more panels. I'm going to try to keep the time at 6:30. If 6:30 is good enough for you guys, because now look, it's 9 o'clock, we're finished. Or if y'all wanted a little bit earlier, let me know so we could gather together. Because
it's so much about reach one, teach one. It's so important about reach one, teach one, because a lot of people, you sit up there. It was liberated that Obama said, yeah, and I'm gonna tell you what the other president did with Germany and Russia. But okay, for soldiers, you already know. So they sit up there, and now the biracial. No, you either going to be the color that you are. No biracial. Either you black or you white. But when you want to get color, and people talking about colorism and stuff to that effect, I just want the Constitution. We have a lot of different topics that we can definitely get into, as far as in, the Constitution and how we're 3/5 and how there's only 1% in the world. Even with all the new entrepreneurs coming up, which I want to proud to say, I'm so grateful that one of my sons that I raised, he just opened up a black bodega right in the middle of the hood, right in the middle of the hood in New York City. Proud of him. I can't wait to go there. Excuse me, I'm proud of him. Can't wait to go there and patronize it. And it's that more and more black people. More and more black people.
More and more black people.
Hi, L Bigfoot 22. So more and more black people have to actually start standing up and making jobs for themselves. Make your own jobs. Be your own entrepreneur. I'm not going to tell you that the money that the man is paying you is good money, but good money is money that you can make yourself and that you can pursue other endeavors. You can't just sit up there and say, well, boss man, give me enough money to keep a roof over my head. What about building your own roof over your head? You know what I'm saying? What about supplying your own? Some places, out here where I live, I wanted to do, like, if I didn't have such many dogs, I wanted to start doing my own vegetables. And I'm learning how to do my own vegetables inside of my house, how to grow them inside of my house. Because a lot of people, oh, the organic vegetables are so much better than for the. No, I don't think they are. The organic vegetables that's in the stores that you're paying all this money for, I don't think they are better for you, because wash them and see all the contaminants and the dirt that you actually get off of them compared to ones that are not organic. They figure, oh, the black people are going to now start eating the organic food. We'll kill them that way. Oh, the vaccinations, we'll kill them that way. We'll give them a bad batch. You're always trying to put off the dirty, dirty stuff on people of color, but yet you sit up there and you want our money. Black people spend more money on Christmas, Easter, New Year's than any other people. And who is you giving your money to? The man.
That's
You
just
don't
like
get
that.
nothing.
Just like that young boy, I don't know if you heard on the news. I cannot think of that boy's name. Oh God, because I'm so used to calling him Auntie May because he reminded me of an Auntie May because he had the pop. Well, I know what he put that $24 million diamond in his head.
Mm.
Did y'all hear about that?
No, I definitely won't hear about no dumb shit like that. But
he had it implanted in his head. Do you
so he
know
looked like the guy from Vision from Avengers.
Oh my gosh. Let me see.
Their birthday too. What you mean, L Bigfoot? What they birthday too? What is that?
Spend a lot of money. What is this boy's name? I know it's Little something.
Little Wayne, Little Yachty, Little Babu, Little Shotgun,
something.
Little Bobo, Little Momo, Mike. Oh, goddamn Little.
I almost had it. God damn it. What's his name? Little something.
Little C's. Oh, I'm sorry. He broke. Yes, I saw it.
Oh.
Tory Lanez. Tory Lanez? No, he looked like, no, he looks like a Little Uzi.
Yeah. Thank you. Now I ain't got the, I'm going to show you the picture though.
And you know what's so funny? No, this guy said it. I don't know none of these rappers and stuff.
Oh, thank
he
you.
He used still playing. L Bigfoot said so. But you know what's so crazy about it? Lil Wayne, when he went to jail and he has the diamond teeth and stuff in his mouth, right? Lil Wayne went to jail and they was like, you have to remove your grill. He was like, ain't no grill. These are implanted. This is in my mouth. They're implanted. I can't remove them. So, was they going to pull all his damn teeth out? If it was you or I, yes, they would have.
They did. I call he look like an old lady to me, so that's why I always call him
old
auntie.
They call him old auntie.
That's what I call him. So,
but you know, like even I like Plies. Even Plies was like, you know, he's becoming very much more conscious as well because he removed all his gold teeth out of his mouth, and he got his regular teeth, put regular implants in his mouth. I was there when he buried all his gold teeth. He buried them. He actually dug up a hole in his backyard and buried them. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are now trying to understand, you know, this money. Like Ice Cube said, yo, I got money, you know what I'm saying? But I want my family and my friends and my people to eat too. You know, look at this. Tattoos all over his damn face, and now he got a diamond. He better hope they didn't give his dumb ass a Cuban zirconian. Oh, now I sound like homegirl.
Little dummy. Tory Lanez and Little Uzi Vert did it. I don't know who else. Did you see that? Well, his little aunties. His name is Auntie May. I've been calling the boy Auntie May so long.
That's what I said, Bigfoot. I said he trying to look like Vision from Marvel Comics. Yeah. Trying to look like Vision. But has no vision. You got people starving all over the world. You're going to put a $24 million diamond in the middle of your forehead, you dummy. How many people are going to try to kill you for that now? and sell it. Just dumb. I mean, like, we don't tell people what to do with their money, because I definitely don't tell nobody what to do with theirs. If you choose to invest it, you invest it. You choose to live your life, you live your life. But I think that's just dumb. And these stars, these are who our children are looking up to. I thank God my children don't do that. My family don't care about that nonsense. But these are the people that our children make money, spend our money on them to do foolishness. What doctor does that? You think when you went to sleep, the doctor actually didn't do a switcheroo on you? You dummy. You take it out and you get your head blown off. Just dumb. I could take this.
Somebody else said the same thing. I think it was Lord Jamal. It was Lord Jamal. He said something
yes,
like
for soldier.
Tory Lanez tried to say his imprint was a right. Right. He said it, but that was nothing but words.
They don't even have $1 billion between the both of them. Right. So, with the clout chasing, you know what I'm saying? This is what they do. This is what they do. People, even on YouTube or different platforms or whatever, you know what I'm saying? You're trying to do bigger and better than the next person. Let me tell you, when I didn't have no electricity for 5 days, almost 6 days, I wish I was in the projects. Okay? I wish. Because even with no electricity on in the projects, that cold air wasn't hitting you like you crazy, like from all this open space. Okay?
All right, Queen, thank you for coming in. We're almost finished.
Thanks, Red Queen.
Don't forget tomorrow for our next lesson. But thank you so much.
Good night, Red Queen. Yeah. But, I look forward to tomorrow. I'm just saying, a lot of people are not as better off as other people want them to be. But to sit up there, all the people starving, and your family members just to get something put in your forehead like that, seriously? Is that what we're doing?
The starving, that's what makes it even worse, Miss Rod. You got
you could have took that $24 million and built a school. Like a lot of people don't like Dr. Umar for whatever reasons, his private life or whatever happens, whatever goes on. But one thing I can say about him, he wants to build a place for our Black children. I've been a supporter. I've been watching him for years. I mean, you might want to do something on that too one day. So give send you some videos, Tony. But it tells you about the Black women and also about reparations. He's very informative. I have researched and checked out what he said. And it's like, I got his phone number, girl. I'm gonna tell him. I'm gonna tell him we're gonna do it. But a lot of things that he has said, Minister Farrakhan. How can you actually denounce Minister Farrakhan? And the one thing that Minister Farrakhan said on your behalf is, if anything, if he even get a broken finger, I will end you. He was talking about Obama. He said, it's okay, my brother denounced me in public. But let me let you know, if anything happens to him, as so much as a fracture, he's coming through. Okay? So, I know for a fact, not civil service, but under the cover of Minister Farrakhan is the only reason why he was still alive. The only reason he protected him. And this man lived maybe a couple of houses over from him. And you're gonna go for the white man and say, no, I denounce Minister Farrakhan, but yet you wanna out Sharpton? Man, you can talk about Obama and these people and these crazy politics forever, but it's all about Shalom K Money. It's all about getting our family as one. We will not get reparations until we as Black and brown become a nation. And that's where I'm at. I'm with nation building.
Consists of all the 12 tribes. Until all the 12 tribes, because we still have our Latin brothers. We
They're all
still
part
got.
of it. They all part of it. But see, that's one of the issues, Tony. One of the issues is when okay, well, whatever your name might be today. What it is that we always come to the rescue for the next person. And here it is, this fight for our reparations, it feels like we're fighting alone. Okay? We always come to the rescue of other nations. You want to, how does gay rights have more rights than black people? How is that possible when we don't have any rights? You're the alphabet crew, alphabet people. You know what I'm saying? How is that even possible? How is it even possible that you can sit up there and change the gender of a boy and a girl bathroom? How is that possible?
Is it true that was the first thing that President Biden did was sign the bill?
Obama signed that bill.
No.
That was on Obama's watch.
No, it's another one now. Now this just came up. He signed the bill that now you can't use each other's bathroom, but whatever Obama left off at, he picked up at, because that was all over. But
well, that's for the states. The state that I'm in denounce all of that. Okay, the state that I'm in denounce all of that. They don't allow this. They don't allow that. Matter of fact, quiet is kept, and I see it every day. The state of Texas is about to branch off to become back to a republic state. I don't mean Republican. I don't mean Democrat. Its own state in its entirety, separated from the United States of America. Now, I'm listening, I'm watching, because if that does happen, if Texas does get its own national Republican state, then that opens the door for Washington, D.C. to become a state. You see how it works?
Well,
yes, it does go back to biblical times, foot soldier. Yes, because remember when God destroyed, where did he destroyed? He destroyed for the gay people, Sodom and Gomorrah. He destroyed the city.
Mm-hmm.
So, gay alphabet people been around for a long time. They run the country. They run the country because at the same time, when we vote in, that's why when I vote for whoever I vote for, I hold them accountable. It was a big deal when I moved out here and they refused to let me to vote. When they did not let me to vote, girl, I thought I was going to be on the news. I gave them hell. I called all the way up to the governor's office. Police was like, oh, well, I said, I'm not going nowhere. You're trying to silence my vote. They were like, who you voting for? None of your business who I'm voting for. I demand to get my vote. They called the voters registration people. And they was like, well, Mr. Your paperwork came in a day late. I said, no, it didn't. Because how could it come a day late when you sent me the card, the voters registration card with my name on it? Man, it was horrible.
Girl. Dog. K Money, are you going live? Are you going live, K Money? Are you going live, darling? Because we want to hear about what's going on with JMJ.
That's another one.
With the best slogan, I'm not going to mention names, but with the best slogan ever, not given, I'm going to put on my own. Don't stop it before you go on my keyboard now. Get down now.
He's another one that's being railroaded. And like he said, if they can do this to him, who's next? We're next. He's trying to stop all this stuff from going on with our people. Who's next? We are next. I mean, I promise you, those videos that I have on my page, I had the freaking cops. They already flagged my house. I had the cops sitting outside my door. Like if I'm public enemy number one. Why is that? I had to go out there and tell them, I don't want you parked in front of my house anymore. Yes, I wrote letters. I wrote damn right. I ain't got nothing else better to do besides sit my ass at my computer and write a letter to the governor, well, I ain't write to Ted Cruz no more because, you know, he might be assassinated sometime this year. But I'm writing. You write your letters.
Something might happen to him. That's what she said.
Write letters. You have to sit up there and you have to hold your mayors accountable, hold your congressmen, your councilmen, your city council. These are the people that you vote in. The president, it don't really matter because they're presidents for overseas. They don't do nothing for our country. They take care of the business outside of our country. They do negotiations and stuff. That's why the one that just left office, I mean, the same stuff that he accused Obama of, he did it. Nobody seems to understand what he did. He put out a hit on the entire 3 chains of government that runs the United States. He was the only one not there. And he pointed to the place and sent them. So if he committed mutiny, there's so many different crimes he committed that day. It's just unbelievable. But yet, this black man who's trying to get his black people and brown people together pointed a flashlight at an FBI agent who wasn't recognized as an agent, just a man on a roof that could be a sniper, almost $300,000 in debt, trying to clear his name in the courts. I tell you. People better wake up.
Yeah,
she said she's not going live. She's taking the night off.
Oh, okay. Well, if anybody came in towards the end, please watch the replay. And let's give thanks to my co-host, Ms. Rye. I have worked
Thank you very much.
I don't know what I did with it, so I have to clap physically. I thank you very much. You brought a very great insight. So thank you. I don't want to keep up no more of you guys' time.
Are you having a sippy sip, huh? I wish I could have a sippy sip.
That's what I get a headache to go with that. But I'm gonna get a headache to go with that. But I thank you all. Don't forget to check out Ms. Rye. She also has a channel herself. Don't forget to check out my sister K Money. She's on it like the Green Hornet, baby. She is on it. So make sure y'all check them out. If you would like to drop, if I know K Money, I don't need no more people. Well, you can't stop getting more people. The more people
K Money's doing great. K Money's doing great. She's doing great over there. I love it. I love it.
The more people get this information to people, more people need to hear the information. You can't give out good information and say, I don't want to. No, you got to get it. But
absolutely, Foot Soldier. Absolutely, Foot Soldier. You know, Foot Soldier, I can talk to you all day and all night. Absolutely. All they keep putting is distractions. Because where were all the police? Where was the National Guard? It was only 2,000 cops protecting the Capitol, the regular same 2,000. Why would you hold a rally? Who gave the president a rally, permission to do a rally on the day that he was counting the votes? Doesn't that look suspicious to you? Why would you have a rally, a rally of hate at that, the same day they counted the electoral votes? A lot of heads are going to roll behind this. You know, I don't care about those people that they went and they got already. We want the ones that sent them. We want those leaders, because plenty of times when Martin Luther King marched over there and all the people that was in the middle of the Capitol, they were surrounded. The million of people that was there, they was totally surrounded by cops, armed cops, and they came in peace. He's like, oh, the people that was at my rally, they're good people. They didn't come there to fight. No, because the people that came late was already going already there at the Capitol, waiting for your speech to be finished so they can start the intrusion. This is just horrible. I feel so bad. I said, look at it. Look at this. Could you imagine if our vice president was there?
First
And her
soldier
husband
said,
don't play. I like her husband, the white
first
guy.
soldier said to, if you ain't cooking, she ain't watching.
I know. Yes, foot soldier. I'm going to cook and talk at the same time. I'm going to do that. I'm going to cook. Just tell me what you want me to make, sis. Tell me what you want me to make. I'm going to cook and talk at the same time.
Steak again that you made that make my mouth water. It's some steak that you made. It looked like it came straight
my
from a
10-minute
restaurant.
steak? My 10-minute
No.
steak or my Trick Daddy steak? My Trick Daddy steak?
They had the shrimp and stuff with it.
Yes. I saw him make that. And I was like, I made it the Trick Daddy steak. Yeah, that was good.
That, every time I think about that, my mouth water.
I know you're not. You serious, so soldier. Yeah, I'm gonna start cooking again. I just have to be a little more happier. You know, I'm happy when I cook. When I cook again. Yeah. But now I got something to hold. Now that I have something to hold the camera, I probably can do it. I can do it then. I have the long extended stick that I'm learning how to use finally. But thank you very much, Sugar Love. Cash App, Sugar Love.
Yeah, Cash App. If y'all would like to support the channel, let me drop that in here before we go. But it's right under my name. My Cash App is right under my name. Cash App Sugar Love 820.
Yes, we see it.
Because
awesome.
These channels, these type of channels, especially when you go and you don't get monetized. So
right.
is whatever, even if it's $1. People think, oh, $1 go a long way. Money says she happy when she eat. When I'm eating too, but if you won't be amazed how much Rona, can't say the word with the C, how much Rona weight I have gained is unbelievable.
A lot of people did too, yeah, a lot of people.
I just I'm like, oh my God, I've never, and you can't, it's still raining and cold out here, so you can't do nothing. But I had to cut back on some eating. But I'm gonna let you guys go. Tomorrow we're gonna have.
Thank you.
I forgot what I said tomorrow was going to, but we're gonna have some more good stuff tomorrow. I might still come on in the morning and talk about that distraction. Your boy, but that's only in the morning. But at nighttime, we're gonna talk. You can't talk about one thing without the other, because this is more important. You know, getting ourselves together, having these conversations. This is more important, even though it's half of the people in the room and you don't get the subscribers. But I'm like, listen, this got to
share it out. Share it out.
Yeah, please share this out. But I'll see you guys at 6:30 tomorrow. 6 o'clock, 6:30. I want to make it earlier for you guys so we don't be on here all night and y'all got some other stuff to do. You may want to cook or eat or something. But thank you, all you guys, for being here. I am out.
Thank you. Have a blessed night, everybody. Shalom.
Thank you, Ms. Rise. Shalom, Ashe, and all that other good stuff. All right, nighty night. Peace.